Hey, beautiful thriver. Today I want to have a talk to you about how I healed from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I feel it's really important to share this with you because I'm so passionate about giving you information that has real solution with it. So not just about narcissists or narcissistic abuse, but how you can reel with true strategies and inner tools to not just get free from the abuse, but actually thrive afterwards. And this is definitely one of these stories. Okay, so going back 15 years ago, I got to the very zenith, to the absolute breakdown of narcissistic abuse and the end of the narcissistic abuse, the actual abuse experience. And what had happened was I was in and out, I was still obsessed, I was hooked, I was trauma bonded. I'd get away, I'd cave back in, he'd hoover me in. I'd get away again, or I'd feel like I couldn't live without him because the addiction was so powerful. And I was doing tons of therapy and other things to try and stay out, but it wasn't working. And what happened is one day, and just backtracking a little, I was already very, very sick. I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I was shaking. I was triggered all of the time. I was like highly set off by any memories, any contact. I'd get a text message and ice would surge through my veins. I'd barely eaten anything for 6 months, and I'd be lucky if I slept an hour a night. And if I did, I was plagued by nightmares. And everything in my life was breaking apart. I'd lost my properties. I was losing my business. I'd virtually lost my son. I'd lost friends and family. They'd all been smeared against me. And I was absolutely losing my mind. And one day it happened. And I knew when it happened, when I had my breakdown. I'd been standing in the center where I was teaching because I was a personal coach and a healer, and I was helping people with meditation classes and personal development classes. And I was standing in the kitchen and a whole lot of people were all around me. And I felt like I was just suffocating and I wanted to scream and run out of there. And then the weirdest thing happened. I was actually looking at myself from the ceiling, looking down on myself. I literally had an out-of-body experience. And when I did that, I thought and it was weird. It was like this kind of weird calm came over me. And I thought, this isn't normal. Something not good has just happened here. I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience. If you had, please share it with me in the comments, because I'd never had an experience like that ever before. And I kind of made an excuse, and I wanted to get out of there because I was starting to think this is not good. And I walked off the property and I got into my car, and I was still outside of my body. And then when I got into my car, I came back into my body. And then I started having the most horrific images, which I won't go into because they're quite triggering. But suffice to say, it was of me in a car accident and all sorts of things, and it was horrifying. And I don't know how I drove home and I got around the corner, but I did. And then I got home and I tried to breathe, and I was in my body, but these images wouldn't stop. And even with my eyes closed, they didn't stop. And then I thought, this is it. My brain has snapped. And I called a friend, and she came and she got me down to emergency. And as it turned out, I had an adrenal and a psychotic breakdown. And I was then told by the medical profession that I would need 3 antipsychotics so I would have any level of functioning, and that I probably would never return to normal again because of the level of breakdown I had. Now, I came home that night and I was on suicide watch because I'd always been a person, even up to now, and even the state that I'd been in, where I hadn't given up, and I thought, I can get through this. I can survive this. I can get up. I can go again. And I'd been doing that for years. And then at this point, I felt like this is game over. I don't have my health. I have no capacity to get well and make a comeback from here. So I started to plan in the most respectful way of how I was going to leave the planet and my son and not hurt the people around me, because I really didn't see another way. And I had this voice in my head that kept saying, Melanie, there's another way, there's another way. And I thought it was my madness speaking, and it just would not stop. So I walked into my bathroom and I hit the ground and I put my hands up and I screamed out, help me, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't do it to be saved. I did it because there was just nothing else to do. And what happened was the most incredible, startling clarity came into my life that was so crystal clear. It's like I'd never known such truth before. There was no denying it. It just was a truth. And maybe we've got to be out of our head to actually be able to know the truth. And the truth was that I was in this state and I had broken down to the point I was because I'd been trying to fix it all from outside of me. I'd made him the source of it all. And in this startling clarity and realizations that came one after the other, it was me knowing how I hadn't been self-partnered, how I had been my own worst critic, how I had been trying to always push myself with conditional love. Melanie, I will like you. Love you was too big a stretch. If you get all of this done, if you achieve this, if you do that, if you do the other. I'd been my hardest task master. And how? When I was screaming out at him, you don't even know me, when he would accuse me of the most horrible things that I had no capacity to even think of doing, let alone do. I realized, who hadn't known herself? Had I sat with myself and spent time with myself in quiet solitude to be my own best friend and to be my own supporter and my own lover and my own deep companion and self-soother in times of need? No, I hadn't. And on and on and on and on. The realizations were downloading probably in a few split seconds, which was bringing me the deep understanding that this actually wasn't about him. This had been about me and what I hadn't healed within me. And I realized that my state of post-traumatic stress disorder, which really is, it's not safe to be me. It's not safe to be in my body. It's not safe to be in life. It's not safe to be around people. People aren't safe. All of that, those horrible, terrible feelings, were actually about screaming out for me to turn inwards, to self-partner and love and heal myself back to wholeness and be my own source, who could be safe to be in my body and safe to be in life and safe around other people because of trusting and being and knowing myself. So I had all of these awarenesses, and it was mind-blowing, to say the very least. And I also had a vision where I was catapulted into the future, and I felt myself as I know myself now and have for many years, of being whole and in my body and being safe to be me, regardless of what anybody else is or isn't doing. Now, then I was thrown back into the beingness of who I really was, which was shattered and distraught and shaking and emaciated, I really had felt like somebody who was in the bowels of hell. And in that time, I realized in this vision and that awareness, and then coming back into myself, I realized that there was a mission ahead, and I was actually asked by this voice if I wanted to accept this vision of turning inwards to heal myself back to wholeness, because if I did, this is what lay ahead of me. And I knew it was true. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had that opportunity. So I chose it with all of my heart. And then when I came back to me, and I was still in a shocking state, I certainly wasn't healed. I just knew that it could be possible. But there had been a massive, massive shift. And the shift was, rather than my answer being out there and it being all about him and what he'd done to me, and I was a victim to out there, it was all about that if I turn inwards with love and devotion and dedication, and my inner cues and messages and ways to come through this, that I was going to reverse all of it. I knew that. So from that day forward, my focus became on self-partnering and self-healing. And I knew that it was to do with trauma in my body, that my healing was not going to be information or research or by anybody else telling me something. That my answers, they could be my cues to go within, to do the healing work and to find the truth. But it had to be between me and myself and true source. And I knew that like I'd never known that. So then what happened from that point onwards, from that day onwards, I fully signed up to self-partnering. And the first part about that was I had a bath, and I was in the bath with my traumatized, terrorized self. And for the first time in my life, in my mind's eye, I imagined my inner child, and she was dirty and disheveled and traumatized and broken. And I picked her up and I held her in my mind's eye with all of my heart. And I said, sweetheart, I am so sorry that I haven't been here for you. I am so sorry that I assigned everything and everyone else to help you, but you've been waiting and screaming out for me all along. I said, honey, I am here. I love you just as I am. I don't know how we're going to work this out. I don't know how we're going to heal together, but I swear to you with everything I have, I am never leaving you again. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and I imagined holding her, and I imagined her nestling into me, as dirty and as broken as she was. And I felt her sigh relief. And that was the day, that was the first time I felt real love in my life. Ironically, the love I've been looking for all of my life, to be loved as myself, no matter what. And I made the pledge to her, with every breath that I have, I'm going to find a way. And that started an incredible journey, which was so meant to be, because, clearly today, my profession, my mission is a global narcissistic abuse recovery expert. But back then, I thought I was just saving myself. And what happened was incredible synchronicities and miracles where I would get an answer from something, or a cue or an inspiration, or somebody would show up. And I absolutely had post-traumatic stress disorder. I was still getting the triggers and the obsessions about him. if I saw somebody with a t-shirt that looked like him or a car that looked like his or something, I would be triggered to the point of shards through my veins where I could barely breathe and I could barely function, and it could put me in bed for 2 days. But what was different this time was, instead of trying to find something outside of myself to take the pain away, I would hold myself and breathe and say, I love you, I'm here, I'm not leaving. And it was even before I was able to shift trauma with the body healing tools that I was to find and improve and generate and create to the level of quantum freedom healing. Even before that, this incredible shift was happening drug-free. I never went on the antipsychotics, where it was starting to heal. And then I started researching trauma and looking into that and finding out more about it and realizing that these were primal survival beliefs. It's not safe to be in my body. It's not safe to be in life. And I remembered as a little girl, I'd always hid behind my mum's skirts. I was always a little shy and fearful. There was always things in my life that I didn't feel confident enough to do alone. I'd always tried to seek out a man with big, strong shoulders so that I would have somebody to protect me. I'd always been like that. And then, of course, the narcissist in my life had smashed these dormant traumas that probably weren't so dormant, but they were my normal. That was all I knew. Smashed them up to the surface in such a way that they were fully activated and life could not go on as normal. So I knew that I had fully activated trauma in my body, and what I was channeling and researching and learning, which was not about the narcissist anymore, it was about the deep healing of myself within, led me to a journey of things like theta healing, kinesiology, which was an amazing step in my life, kinesiology, and I trained as a practitioner, an applied practitioner, and things like tapping and body code and EMDR. And what I discovered was that it was these things that had the ability to get past the logical brain into the somatic brain, which is the body, which is the subconscious, was where the power and the shifts started happening. And I'd already been in the spiritual fields and personal development and healing, and I'd been a past life regression therapist and many other things for decades. And what I did is I created what was called at the time holographic healing, which was past timeline therapy, theta healing, kinesiology. It was that combination. And I found spectacular healing with my PTSD and with the obsessions. They were melting away. And I literally, even though I'd lost so much, I started to feel like I'd come home to a true relationship with me, where it was safe for me to be in my body without trying to numb out with things like cigarettes or alcohol or food or obsessive compulsive behavior such as workaholism. I could be, and I was loving being. And the joy that brought, the joy in the simple things and the big things. And then I found that because I dedicated to that inner healing to myself, that people and things were showing up in authentic ways to represent the self-partnering that I now had. Life and others were partnering with me in wholesome ways. And the narcissist was becoming non-existent. It wasn't about him anymore. The smear campaigns had fallen off, the attacks and the things that he was trying to do to tear down my life all started falling flat and dissolving away. Not by me doing anything. It was changing because of my beingness, because our outer universe reflects our inner universe. And it was amazing, and I was showing up in life in much healthier ways. However, as a part of my PTSD, I also had agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is it's not safe to be out in wide open spaces. And this had been as a result of the stalking and the threats. But also, too, I'd probably always been a little agoraphobic as my normal. But now I really was agoraphobic. And some days I'd kind of affirmation my way through it. And other days it was so bad that to leave my front door would literally feel like the walls of life were going to crush me. And I would get home terrorized. And it would take me hours and hours and hours, if not days, to recover from the most traumatic experience of being out in the open and feeling like life was going to annihilate me. And I'd never understood people with agoraphobia before, but oh my gosh, after all of that, I completely and utterly understand it. And my heart goes out to you if you are struggling with that you don't feel safe outside of your safe spaces, because it's just a horrible way to be. Now, I already felt like I had super tools in my kit bag. I'd been able to heal so much. I felt the best I ever had, apart from unknown open spaces. And I tried to apply all of my tools and my understandings to heal it, and I couldn't. And I tried the best body modality practitioners that I could find, and they couldn't. Yet I always knew, that if I could get to the core root, the core wound back in my timeline, if I was to pick it up in the dense energy and the trauma energy that had stuck it in place in my inner being, and if I was able to get it up and out and replace it with source, the infinite intelligence of expansion, which can heal what I can't heal, to reset me back to my true coded essence, I knew it could be shifted immediately. I knew it was possible. I just hadn't found the key how to do it. And then around the same time, a girlfriend of mine was in Koh Samui, Thailand, and she said, "Why don't you have some time out and come and have a holiday with me?" And I said to her, "How on earth can I travel to Thailand with agoraphobia? It's unthinkable." And she said, "Something is telling me you need to do this." And something was telling me that too. So I traveled alone to Thailand, and it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my entire life. I had a jumper that I just cried and shook into the whole time. I had airline stewardesses sitting with me. I couldn't even speak, trying to help me. Anyway, I got there. I'm not quite sure how. A lot of it even blacked out. And my girlfriend came and picked me up from the tiny airport, and I could barely walk. I could barely speak. I was shaking, crying, sweating like a crazy woman. And she scooped me up and got me back to the where we were staying at a beautiful resort. And within a few days, I'd settled down with delicious food and beautiful massages and, the gorgeous Thai people and even people in the resort. And I felt so safe and so nurtured and nourished. And my girlfriend keeps saying, "Come on, come out with me." I'm like, I can't. I can't. I don't want to give up this feeling. I can't go out the gates. Well, and she would go off each day and do her thing and spend some time with me. And then one day she was out and I'm in my hotel room, and I said to myself, I want to be in life. I need to be in life. And I set a very strong intention, and I said, today I'm going to get the answer. I know it's there. I'm going to get the answer. And I opened my heart and my mind, and I said, please, I'm ready to receive the answer. And I took dictation. And as I was writing down this healing process, which was It did have timeline in it. It had some theatre, it had kinesiology, and it had other things and protocols that I'd never known, but yet I knew them. And as I was writing it down, I knew this was it. I knew. And I was writing, and I couldn't. I thought, can we get to this? Because I just want to try this. And eventually it stopped. And I didn't know it at the time, but this was the first ever quantum freedom healing that was going to happen. And I worked on myself for 2 hours with it. And what I found was primal, deep survival programs, which was absolutely, it's not safe to be in my body. It's not safe to be in life. But even underneath that, it was, if I'm myself, I'm going to be annihilated. That was the deep core belief. And it had been there for eons. Those of you who understand past lives, you know what I'm talking about. And I did the quantum freedom healing with it. It was about 2 hours of solid work. And when I'd cleared it all out, I walked straight out of, I had to clean myself up because I'd been crying, releasing these massive wounds, and I cleaned myself up. And I walked out the gates of the resort into the main street of Koh Samui. And if any of you have been there, you know how crazy it is. And I was playing and in life in a way that just felt like I'm life force flowing through me, as me. I'm connected to wholesome, beautiful life force. I am supported by all of Source. I felt eternal, immortal, extended. I had feelings that I had never felt before. And really what it was I'd lost the trauma getting in the way of who I was. I'd been able to bring in the Source replacement, which is that you are a part of Source. You're yourself. You are yourself, your true essence, who you really are. And I'd never, ever felt those feelings before, ever. And I went and did shopping and all the things that normal people do when they're on holidays, all the things that I couldn't do before that. And my girlfriend came home and she saw all these bags and these shoppings around me, you know, all the cheap, amazing stuff that you get in Thailand. She's like, did you do this? And I'm like, yes. She goes, what has happened to you? I said, you're not going to believe it. And I told her, and then she's like, can you do some healings on me? And we kept playing around with quantum freedom healing. And anyway, and my holiday was amazing. And then when I went back to Australia, I had already been working with holographic healing with a whole heap of people. And I said to them, we're not doing that anymore. We're not, every time they shut up, we're not going to do a holographic healing. We're going to do this. And I put them on a quantum freedom healing, and they had been doing great with holographic healing. Lots of really big progressive movement out of their trauma. But what happened with this was very similar to what happened with me. The big, deep, resistant traumas were moving. They were shifting, and they were shifting powerfully. And a lot of my clients, they were people that were going through abuse and narcissistic abuse, and they had domestic violence workers or their own psychologists or even psychiatrists. Some of them were medicated. No, they had other people that they were working with as well, a lot of them. And I had these specialists and practitioners ringing me up and saying, what happened to my client? Because they walked into my door a different person than they've been ever. What happened? And it was very sudden. So I spoke to them about quantum freedom healing, and a lot of those specialists came to actually have healings with me. And of course, because most amazing healers have got their own wounds, they were shifting wounds at really powerful rates. And I was not prepared for what was going to happen next. What happened from my clientele, which was already growing and really healthy, it exploded. And within weeks, I was booked out for months. And I knew that it was going, and it was just building and building. And I'd come out of a full day of work with clients, and my answering machine and my emails were chocked up with people saying, "Oh, I know so and so." So the word of mouth. I wasn't advertising anywhere. The word of mouth just went crazy. And it was then that I knew that I needed to be able to replicate this on a much bigger level, because I didn't have the ability to heal everybody myself. And that's when the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program was created. And again, like when I took dictation and I'd had the experience when I had my psychotic breakdown, that something in my brain had opened up. Maybe it broke open and I was able to see the hologram and how energy works and become an energy healer the way I was. And so many things channeled to me from that day onwards, and have never stopped, quite frankly. It still happens every day. And I knew, and I was guided, and I was shown how to create the program and put energy imprints into it so that people via recordings would actually get the power of the energy imprints. And that's exactly what I discovered that happened. People were healing with quantum freedom healing from the recordings. And in fact, they were even doing better than my one-on-one clients, because rather than just see people once a week, they were able to do the healings even multiple times a day to shift their trauma and bring in source and get their reset back to their true selves. So, really the moral to this story is that I want you to know about post-traumatic stress disorder is absolutely, it's this shocking feeling of, I'm not safe to be in my body. It's not safe to be in life. People and life aren't safe. This planet's not safe. And it's horrific when it's fully energized. But I want you to know more than anything, your inner being is screaming out for you. For you. And as soon as you turn around, like I did that day in the bath, with just pure love and devotion to show up for yourself and to turn inwards and say, I'm here, I love you, I see you. Is it any wonder you're like this? Because nobody has shown up. I haven't shown up. I understand why you're like this, and I'm never leaving you again. That is the day where everything can start changing for you. Because no longer does your inner child have to keep screaming out while you're researching another article or having a cigarette or jumping on social media or having a cheese sandwich. Because the screams get louder and louder and louder. Just as that little child, if they ran up to mum and dad and said, Mum or Dad, I'm really hurting and I really need you. And we said, shut up, go away. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to go do this instead. Leave me alone. Of course, that child becomes manic. And I just really want you to know, from my heart to yours, post-traumatic stress disorder is not so much what somebody's done to you. It's because you haven't yet understood the truth and maybe had it really explained to you. I never had. That what's really going on is us missing ourselves. And the screams get louder and louder and louder, trying to get us turned home to ourselves. And then if we don't, eventually that inner child, that inner being will become catatonic and manically depressed and lifeless, or gravitate between the two. And that's exactly how we feel with our trauma until we self-partner and actually heal it. So I hope this has given you hope. I really want you to know that I am a living example of this, and there are thousands upon thousands of people in my community who completely and utterly had post-traumatic stress disorder through the roof. No, they broke down into really, really serious emotional, nervous system, mental, and physical disorders as a result of the trauma. But it is all healable. And when you heal the thrive away, you start feeling better. You remember, you come back together. And when you do that, the obsessions, the post-traumatic stress disorder, the agoraphobia, the fibromyalgia, the adrenal malfunction, the obsession, the addiction, the trauma bonds, they all just start melting away. And it's simpler and faster than you could ever imagine when you know how to do it with a super tool such as quantum freedom healing. So what I would love you to do, check out the link that I've got with this video, which is all about NARP and quantum freedom healing and testimonies. And you can really do your research on it and feel into this and get an idea what happens when you bypass the looking outside and the trying to think your way out of the trauma and know how to somatically, energetically get into your body to do the work at the core root of where it is really coming from. Because that changes everything. I hope that gives you hope. And I'll talk to you soon. Lots of love. Bye-bye.